Everyone, we'll start our meeting. Roll call.
Mayor Brunner,
Here.
Vice Mayor Rich,
Here.
Commissioner Collins,
Here.
Commissioner Clark, Commissioner McDonald.
Here.
Okay, will everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, more presentation of the City of Stuart Wellfield and Water Plant Evaluation. Or am I jumping ahead of myself? I sure am.
Ahead of the roll call, or no?
Yeah, I did it.
Approval of the agenda.
I move the approval of the agenda. Second.
We have approval of agenda. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hold on a minute, which one of these?
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, we did have an invocation this evening. I just, I'm not sure.
No, I know, and that's what,
The invocation, be here.
no, we just need, the
I don't
presentation
believe
was I was
that
trying
they're
to.
Here, I'm just double checking. Oh, you are. I'm sorry.
The
He
invocation
is here.
Thank you, sir, please.
Come on up. We take it out of.
Yeah, we'll all rise again. He's going to give the invitation. Thank you, sir.
Yes, absolutely. I'm Aaron Meehan. I'm the pastor of Higher Purpose Pentecostal Church. Thank you for this opportunity to be here and offer this invocation. When I was in college, I took a couple business classes, and in those classes, I learned the concept of the upside-down pyramid, right? It's the same idea of an organizational pyramid. You've got the top of the company in the very top, and those who their constituents on the bottom, and various levels of managers and leadership in between. And the idea of the upside down pyramid is that though the leader's often on top, they're actually more on the bottom. And they're holding up the entire organization on their shoulders. And it reminds me of the weight of leadership, the weight that you all bear today in leading this great city, and I want to say thank you for that. Thank you for your commitment to that. And so in my invocation, I'd like to just pray for God's blessing on you, and to pray for peace for you, peace in this meeting, and that the Lord would bless it. If we could bow our heads right now. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this opportunity to come together to better our city, Lord God, our government, local government. We pray that your peace would be in this place. Bless every person, Lord, here. Help us, God, to carry out this business, Lord, with love in our hearts. Bless these leaders that, God, you'd give them wisdom, understanding, and we thank you again for all of your goodness in our lives. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir.
Presentation, right?
Yes, I didn't have anything that said that we had a, anyway. City of Stuart Wellfield and Water Plant Evaluation, I'll say it again. Go ahead. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to sit over the control over there and kind of guide the presentation or start it off. Well, good afternoon, Mayor, members of the commission. It's so good to be with everyone here this afternoon. For the record, my name is Peter Cunin, Director of Utilities and Engineering for the City of Stuart. And we have for you this afternoon a presentation that's going to be given by our engineering consultant, Kimley Horn. It's the evaluation of our existing water well fields, and also a evaluation and recommendation for what is in essence the future of the city's water treatment. So what will be explained to all of you is first the condition of our existing wells, which is with our existing superficial aquifer water supply. And as most of you know, the city recently opened up a new reverse osmosis water treatment facility, which we had the ribbon cutting back on May the 10th. Very exciting grand opening. And certainly it is the future of water production for the city of Stuart. That reverse osmosis facility, as will be explained in a few moments, draws water from a deeper water source, the Florida aquifer. And so without any further ado, there's a lot to cover with the presentation. I'd like to introduce from our consultant, Kimley Horn, Ms. Andrea Carpenter and Mr. Mark Miller. They're going to be giving you the rundown of the presentation, and then certainly we're here to field any questions that you may have afterwards. So with that, Andrea, if you would please get started. Thank you.
sir.
Good evening, City Commissioners. We do appreciate the opportunity to presenting the well field evaluation and the results of that, as well as the treatment plan evaluation. Also with us today is John Friedrich. He's with JLA Geosciences. He also assisted in the well field condition assessment, which is a portion of this evaluation that we're going to present to you today. Thank you. So as Peter mentioned, the age of the City of Stuart well field has exceeded its useful life. It treated the City of Stuart very well. It did last for about 50 years, but typical useful life for a superficial well field is about 30 years. The material of the well is it's steel, which doesn't last as long. A PVC well casing does last a bit longer. You could get a longer life out of that, but most of pretty much 95% of these wells are made of steel casing. So there has been a condition assessment for the wells. We did downhole videos to determine the condition of each well, as well as we did find scaling. We found substantial capacity degradation on the wells. Holes in the casings, definitely well casing failures. Also, there's a screen at the bottom of the well been degraded or just no longer existent. And therefore, with that not being in place, there was a substantial amount of sand production for some of these wells that does get into the water supply system. And that sand is actually creating impacts to the filtration system that is used to actually remove the sand from the water supply. So this does increase maintenance of this particular filtration system. So these wells are, like I mentioned earlier, it is beyond its useful. Typical well life is 30. Next. Other challenges that the city is well aware of is the emerging contaminants issue, the latest being PFAS. But also there is VOCs, which is another contaminant that the city has been dealing with for many, many years. These emerging contaminants have required additional treatment processes, such as the ion exchange system and also VOC towers. So it's led to a more complicated system, having to have all these additional treatment processes to treat different types of emerging contaminants that are plaguing the city's superficial aquifer supply currently. These emerging contaminants have increased operating costs and capital costs because of the addition of these treatment facilities that are needed for removal of the contamination.
PFAS, and what was the other one? PFC?
VOCs, they're volatile
VOC.
organic, yeah. And that's been an ongoing, probably about 50 years now. Since 1989, I believe, was when that contaminant had emerged as contaminating the groundwater supply. So other areas, that's just the reliability and the degradation of the superficial aquifer. It's just, it's impeding on the different treatment processes and the water quality that is being provided to the city of Stuart for drinking water. One thing I do want to note, we love this photo, the bottom right corner. So the lower bucket, that's where it's just your superficial aquifer supply is treated normally without ion exchange. So there is a bit of, that's the organic. So the organics in the water supply does produce a certain color to your water. It's not harmful, it's just, aesthetically, it doesn't look good. So the ion exchange system, you could tell the difference with the implementation of the ion exchange system.
Yeah.
So with the implementation of the reverse osmosis, that treatment process, blending that with the lime softened water that the city has been using to treat the superficial aquifer would also reduce, I should say, the amount of color in organics in the city's water supply. Just a background on the two different potential water supply sources that are available to the city of Stuart. The first one we've been talking about is the superficial aquifer supply. The depth of this well is less than 200 feet. The city's depth, well depth below land surface is about 125 feet. Over time, what happens with these wells, yes, you rehabilitate it over time, but eventually, like I mentioned earlier, you reduce its useful life within 30 years. So over time, the production of the wells are limited, capacity is limited or reduced. And then also just drought impact on a superficial aquifer is more pronounced than a Florida aquifer's water supply. All the other, contaminants, I should say impurities, are the organics that we discussed, as well as iron. That you find a higher level of iron in a superficial aquifer supply versus the Florida aquifer supply. And of course, the man-made contaminants that plague the groundwater supply. So the other water supply source is the Florida aquifer. That's being used currently at the city's treatment plant. The depth of that well is about 1,000 feet, plus or minus, below land surface. It's a confined aquifer, which means it protects the water supply from those man-made contaminants that are impacting the groundwater supply, the superficial groundwater supply. It does have an elevated level of sulfur or sulfide, which is that, that smelly egg smell, that rotten egg smell. But that does get removed with a treatment. It's called degasification. So that removes that hydrogen sulfide and that egg smell from your water supply. But advantages are the abundance of the supply. The abundance is compared to a superficial aquifer it's not comparable. Resiliency to droughts, there is no drought impact to a Florida aquifer supply source. And protected from contaminants I mentioned, and it's an extremely reliable source of drinking water. So Peter did mention, I'm sure we all know, that there was a ribbon cutting on May 10th. The ribbon cutting was for the 1.5 million gallon per day reverse osmosis treatment plant. There is room, the design does allow room for an expansion to a 3 million gallon per day reverse osmosis treatment plant. It's really just adding an additional membrane here, to our skid, we call it a skid. And also a degasification tower, an additional degasification tower. So part of the design of the 1.5 million gallon is allowed for future expansion and build out to a 3 million gallon per day treatment plant. The water source, so adding this additional treatment process has definitely reduced the stress in the superficial aquifer supply, but going to that additional 1.5, so 3 million gallon per day expansion could benefit and relieve more stress on the superficial aquifer supply.
Awesome.
Also, just a point, the Florida aquifer is easily permitted when you're comparing it to a superficial aquifer supply well. The reason for that is that you have a lot less legal users and impacts from other users, as well as.
Come up to the microphone.
Sorry.
The superficial aquifer in Martin County is considered an aquifer of limited availability just because of the shallow depth and the general low yield from it. And so getting permitted for superficial aquifer water supplies relatively difficult from the Water Management District, whereas the Floridan is an alternative water supply according to the Water Management District, and they really support and promote the use of that. So those two components, plus the permitting regulations with existing legal users and wetlands impacts with your superficial aquifer, make it, much more difficult.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we did complete a condition assessment of the existing superficial aquifer supply well field. It was determined that 16 of the 23 wells require replacement. The reasons for these is because of, as I mentioned initially, holes in the casings, the age of the steel casing, low production, low capacity yield. So high sand production in some of the wells. It's, bottom line, it's exceeded its useful life, so replacement is required for 16 of those wells. The remaining 7, we did identify as only requiring rehabilitation, but most of those wells are also steel cased, and long-term, they need to be replaced. But for the time being, they can be rehabilitated while the other wells are being constructed and designed and constructed and replaced. Then that's the table is just a summary of the wells and the results of aging, just has, as I mentioned, aging, holes in the casing, et cetera. Items are reasons for replacement versus rehabilitation, and why we determine which well needs to be replaced. Additionally, we did evaluate the current capacity of the well field and the permitted capacity of the well field. Day one, the 23 wells or so were able to provide 7.7 million gallons per day when the well was new. Today, it's been reduced by about 30 to 50%, and again, that's just due to the condition of the superficial wells. I have here 5.5 million gallons per day of actual flow, and that's really on a good day. If there's a drought or just a well is not producing well, it's actually been reduced to about 3 or 3.5 million gallons per day. So to put that in the context of max day, or the capacity of the plant, the design capacity is 6 million gallons per day. So that 3.5 million gallons per day of water supply does not meet that 6 million gallon per day max day requirement. Summary of the cost for replacement ranges from about $1.5 million to $1.8 million. And that's just, the range reflects the complication, or whether the complexity of the replacement of the well, and if it's a larger well or a smaller well, larger diameter, I should say, versus a smaller diameter well. But overall cost is about 1.5 to 1.8 for a replacement of a well, of a superficial well. Something else that we've been working with the city, not necessarily as part of this evaluation, but just as in our tenure here with the city, and evaluating their well field, we provide a recommendation for standardizing the well, and essentially it's just using different materials that promote I can't even say that word, longevity. And that's using materials like PVC versus the steel, and stainless steel versus a steel wellhead. So these materials just increase the longevity of the well. The city, I should say, we helped them, but the city did replace one of the wells, so it is with this standardization. So we do have a prototype already in place for all future wells, for future well replacement. Other considerations is the proximity of the wells to sanitary hazards. There are setback requirements for compliance for new wells. The existing wells, because they've been around for so long, there has been a lot of development around the wells, whether it's commercial or residential. So that, additional force mains, stormwater systems, et cetera. And so some of these wells are actually within the setbacks, and if we were to put a new well in its current place, it would be a non-compliance concern when you're considering permitting that new well. So we do have to look, and we have looked, high level, looked at siting the superficial wells, and that also played in a role in deciding whether to replace the well or just abandon it and go to Florida and aquifer supply, and in expanding that 1.5 million gallon per day RO treatment process to 3 million gallons per day. I've said this several times. We also evaluated emerging contaminants and the impacts on the wells. There will be some wells, a portion of the wells, that will have to be replaced no matter what, because these wells do have an emerging contaminant source within the groundwater that it is pulling from. So we still, the city still is obligated to treat that water for PFAS removal or the VOCs. So those wells will still have to remain and be replaced irregardless of expansion to the 3 million gallon per day RO treatment. Other considerations are the ratio of whether, I say ratio of superficial water supply versus Florida water supply, whether it's 75% superficial and 25% Florida water supply source, or it's 50-50. What does that blend look like? What is the resulting water quality from that? So we did consider those aspects when we're looking at different treatment process blending, because we still, as I mentioned, that we still have to replace the superficial wells that do have a contaminant source. So we will have to blend that superficial water with the Florida water supply source. So we did look at different combinations and ratios of the water supply and the capacity from the Florida versus the superficial. Other considerations are obviously capital costs, because that's really important. Operating costs, long-term, we looked at just a 10-year horizon. So we considered capital costs for different sources, different Florida, different ratio of Florida versus superficial, what that additional treatment process looks like, and what that cost is associated with that. And then of the other considerations we did, so there is if you go more to a Florida water supply, there is a reduction of disinfection byproducts. It's DBPs. There's a maximum level that you do have to abide. You have to be under. They call the maximum contamination limit. That you do have to be under that. And if the DBPs are potentially elevated from a superficial aquifer supply versus using that Florida aquifer supply. We've talked about it does reduce the emerging contaminants concern if you do go to that Florida aquifer supply. And then blending the superficial with the Florida aquifer also does have an impact as a result of a lead and copper corrosion. We did a cost comparison for several options, 4 different options. We looked at different ratios. That's where the ratio comes in, the Floridan supply versus the superficial supply. Option 1, that just assumes, that's how it is today. It assumes that you replace and rehab your entire well field, and the capital costs and the operating costs are associated with that. With the 1.5 million gallon per day RO treatment, it's still there, but it's supplemental, meaning that total capacity you would have is a 6 million gallon per day lime treated plant, and then you also have that 1.5 million gallon per day RO treatment, but you're supplementing that water supply, the RO treated water, with the 6. So you're really only using about 4.5. But it offers of the lime treated water for, if you're using your RO treatment. But what that does is it does allow flexibility with utilizing the 2 different water sources. The option 1A, that reduces the requirement So the ratio is 4.5 million gallons per day of your treating your superficial to 1.5 of treating the Florida aquifer supply. So you have some flexibility, but it's not as much as option one. However, you can reduce the amount of wells that you need to replace, and you can just abandon them, which it makes this option a little more cost-effective when you're comparing it to option one. And this is where we're at today. Yeah. Thank you. Option two is the 50-50 blend. So you have your 3 million gallons per day of your treating your superficial aquifer, and you have your 3 of treating the Florida aquifer. This allows for additional wells to be abandoned, so you don't have to replace those wells, and it's being supplemented with your Florida aquifer supply well, which again is more reliable and more resilient than your superficial. The capital costs are elevated, but when you look at the 10-year horizon, you start to get your money back after about 10 years when you're comparing it to option 1A. So after that, beyond the 10 years, it'll pay for itself, essentially. Option 3 is if the city was to expand to 4.5 million gallon per day RO treatment and maintain the 1.5 million gallons per day, that would just cover the treatment of your superficial wells that, as I mentioned earlier, your superficial wells that need to remain in place so the city can treat that water to remove the PFAS and remove the VOCs from that superficial water supply. And that's just because of compliance with Florida Department of Environmental Protection, that you would have to maintain those wells so you can continue to treat the contaminant in the groundwater supply. The resulting costs on that, though, is elevated. The city's treatment plant does not have the infrastructure in place to be able to handle a 4.5 million gallon per day reverse osmosis plant. There will be a lot of infrastructure improvements, pipe replacement, et cetera. So that's why it elevates that cost, that capital cost for the option 4 if we were to expand a 4.5 million gallon per day reverse osmosis treatment plant. Yeah, so, yeah, in there. This also, option 3, also requires the design and construction of a deep injection well, an additional one. Currently, the byproduct from the reverse osmosis plant does go to the deep injection well, IW2, at the wastewater treatment plant. However, because of the capacity required to dispose of the byproduct for a 4.5 million gallon per day reverse osmosis plant, it would need a dedicated deep injection well to handle that capacity. The wastewater treatment plant may not be able to handle the capacity for disposal of that byproduct. One other thing just to note is that we still would like the city commissioners to consider an additional deep injection well dedicated to the RO treatment plant if the city was to proceed with option 2. Option 2 is our recommendation, by the way, and I will get into why. But we would like the city commission to consider, not today, but in the future, implementing or approving the design of a deep injection well, because it does allow for redundancy and reliability to be able to dispose of the byproduct that comes from the reverse osmosis treatment. Should the well be down, the deep injection well be down for maintenance or testing or whatever at the wastewater treatment plant, you have a backup deep injection well that you can use to dispose of the byproduct, because otherwise you'll have nowhere to put that. If the other deep injection well is down or it's down for maintenance or what have you, you won't have anywhere to put that byproduct from the 4.5 or even the 3 million gallon per day treatment, reverse osmosis treatment process or option. So, next. So, like I said, we recommend expanding to 3 million gallons per day of reverse osmosis. Like we said, like I mentioned before, the infrastructure's there. Not much additional construction or design or construction is needed. It's just an additional train, a reverse osmosis train. It's an additional degasifier. There are additional wells the Florida and aquifer supply wells. However, you'll be reducing the amount of superficial wells that need to be replaced. And long-term, because of the reliability and the resiliency of the Florida water supply, it actually, you get more bang for your buck because you can always rely on that water supply. That Florida water supply is always there. It's never going to run out. You don't have the impacts of emerging contaminants or any, pretty much that you're dealing with today with the superficial aquifer supply. It does meet the city's long-term water supply goals. It maintains, it does address the emerging contaminant issue. It utilizes drought resistance. There's no impact on drought for Florida water supply. It is flexibility with, it does have some flexibility with alternative water supply. So we do recommend moving forward with the 50-50 split, the expansion to the 3 million gallon per day RO treatment. We have cited the Florida wells. The Florida well locations, proposed Florida well locations are in orange. The existing Florida well that we have that's treating that is being used as a water supply for the 1.5 million gallon per day is on the City of Stuart site. We also did cite the deep injection well, proposed deep injection well IW3, and that would be, that's actually at the field across from, but it's close enough to the treatment plant to where it's a shorter run. And like I said, by adding that, it'll be more robust, and you're adding redundancy to your existing deep injection well at the wastewater treatment plant. So in conclusion, we request authorization, or we on behalf of the city request authorization for construction and, design and construction for the superficial well field improvements. Also, the reverse osmosis plant expansion and the addition or the design and construction of additional Florida and aquifer wells. And then long-term, just consider an additional deep injection well just for reliability and backup for the existing deep injection well at the wastewater treatment plant.
Wait right there in case we have some questions.
Sure.
Yes, we're available for any questions you may have at this time.
Any commissioners, anyone have any questions?
I don't have any questions right now, but it was a lot to take in there, and I think that we're going to have to really be spending some time evaluating, but I do think that you have some very good recommendations, and it is definitely some complicated stuff. So, but great presentation, by the way. I think you did it very well.
And obviously, Mr. Cunin and I wanted to bring it forward just to give the board a kind of an overview of what's going on right now. And what really is happening is the new RO plant is open, but the operational costs really, Mark probably knows more than I do about it, but are undetermined at this time. And we're looking for, I guess, that balance of what's the right number of gallons from the superficial versus the right number of gallons from the Floridan, to make it so that the cost of the media related to the superficial is at the right level so that we continue to remove the PFAS and PFOA, and at the same time that we don't go over on the RO to the extent that the operational costs of it exceed budgetary costs. But we also have to balance that with the presentation about causing the entire well field to collapse, which, could hurt. So it is a complicated matter, and we will keep bringing it back to you as we move forward. And I'll be consulting with Peter and probably come back to you at some point with an agenda item as it relates to the progress for the future and the design of, at minimum, probably reviewing the design of those expansion items that were discussed. Whether the commission decides to actually construct it or not will be, for another day. It's more about just planning for it, anticipating it, and understanding what's out there.
Thank you, thank you. Commissioner Rich, did you have a question?
Yes, yeah, thank you for your presentation. Do you notice that there are more contaminants in the SAS source on an annual basis, or less or fewer? But I mean, we must monitor it, and
There's EPA, I think every 5 years comes out with what they call UCR unregulated contaminant
I'm sorry, I'm
monitoring
having
rule.
difficulty hearing you.
Oh, it's called UCMR. They call it unregulated contaminant monitoring rule. And every 5 years, they add new, like PFAS, they've added 29 new ones in UCMR 5. Lithium is another one they're adding because all the batteries out there that get in groundwater supply. So that's EPA's approach to all this. That's what develops the regulations, MCLs, and all that.
So the cost of removing, we probably could anticipate that the cost of cleaning that water source would go up?
Probably, that's why what Mike was talking about is the RO operating costs are actually more competitive than keeping the ion exchange PFAS treatments. Because you got VOC towers, lime softening, all these other treatments. So, and the PFAS, the regulations are still changing, so those costs aren't going to go down, they're only going to go up. So what we found in the study is the brackish RO treatment is actually more cost-effective operating than what the PFAS.
So if we go in and wanted to rehab those wells, those SAS wells, do you have to permit them? Because we would be taking more water from that source that you said is more heavily regulated? Do you have to permit that?
The superficial wells are already permitted
Okay, so it's just rehabbing them.
or replacing, yes.
Okay.
Anything-
Even though we're drawing almost 2 million more gallons a day.
So the Florida aquifer supply, yes, we need to permit the additional wells.
But that's easily permitted, you said.
The superficial is already existing in a permit, that's correct.
Hello, I was just going to add that if we're rehabilitating a well, there's no permitting with DEP or the health department associated with that. That's sort of a maintenance type item. But if you're replacing an existing well, even if you maintain the same water supply, there's permitting required to move it to a new location with the wellhead, the location, the sanitary setback requirements. And those are a lot of the complications that we have to work through with any of these wells.
So a lot of rehab goes on. What is the capacity each day of each of those Floridan wells?
Like production is perfect, but capacity, right now, the existing Florida aquifer well, the one that has been constructed, is 1.5 million gallons per day. But the capacity, design capacity is 1 million gallons per day. But because it's such a high production well, we can't rely on this, but today, it's a high production well, and it can provide 1.5 million gallons per day to the treatment process. However, it's permitted for 1 million gallons per day. And you don't want to over pump these wells, because then it's called total dissolved solids, but your water quality goes up.
What? I'm sorry.
It's called total dissolved solids,
Right.
but your water quality degrades as you over pump the well. So 1 million gallon per day capacity is kind of the sweet spot, and that's what the design capacity is for the Florida well and future Florida wells. So you'd have one well dedicated. Yeah.
Just a rule of thumb, the Floridan well is probably 10-to-1 production-wise to a sufficient. And cost-wise, it's 4-to-1. So it kind of makes sense, but not everybody does brackish in Florida because it's more operating cost. But that's just a rule of thumb for sufficient Florida.
So what is the actual RO byproduct? Is it a slurry? Is it a solid? Is it what?
It's just salt.
water?
It's very high levels of salt water. You're pulling out
Okay.
half the salinity of sea. So it's a high saline water. And we call it solution, but it's essentially
And how
water.
deep is that injected?
1,000 feet.
3,000.
3,000 for D.
3,000.
3,000 for deep injection. Yeah,
That's an expensive well.
I thought I had read that at one time.
yeah.
I think we should use it to give people chlorinators for their pools.
Shrimp farming.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Collins? Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter?
Thank you.
Do you have any You have any more that you want to show us or presentations? I think, any more questions? Any for Peter? Anyone?
Well, that ends the presentation, but I'm here. If you do have any questions you'd like to ask of me, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to know why Milton would haul off and hit you in the head like that.
He didn't. Actually, it's
I
a,
heard that.
Milton would never do that.
That's not true.
No, it was, I'll attest to that. Milton had nothing to do with this. No.
It's not true.
No. Should see the other guy.
Okay, well, we can go with any comments from any of our commissioners. Anyone have a comment?
No comment.
No comment,
I have no
okay.
comments this evening, thank
We're
you.
moving right along here. Our manager, Mike, do you have any comments?
I do. I wanted to announce, kind of stole my thunder, but the city has received the acceptance of completion of the RO plant, which is the final clearance from the FDEP. And the letter said the system is released to the full extent of the permitted plans, so it is officially up and running.
Awesome.
I also wanted to mention that Lisa Scott, who works in the police department, was named as the Executive Administrative Assistant for a medium-sized police agency for the state of Florida at the Florida Chiefs Police Association a couple of weeks ago, which is a very high honor for Lisa and for the police department. In addition to that, the Stuart Police Department and Kathleen Lannon, with assistance from Joe Hogan, as I read in the report, received the Florida Gang Investigators Association Cops and Bobbers program, which is a youth crime prevention program that no one else had, but that's been very successful as well. And the City of Stuart Police Department also received the William Neely Gang Prevention Award for the state of Florida as well, which is great news and obviously shows they've been working very hard.
Yes, sir.
I have nothing else.
Thank you.
Good job, Chief.
Now, we jumped ahead of ourselves. We still have want me to start over with the approval? We still
We
have the
did have an
approval.
approval of the agenda. It was Commissioner Rich and Commissioner McDonald.
Yes, okay. Any public comment? I see none. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
I do want to ask, an issue came up, and I can put it on the next agenda if you're inclined. We were contacted by Ashley Capital, and they were reviewing the landfill property, and some time ago, I think it was like maybe 2010 or so, there's a church directly behind the landfill that when it was approved to be developed, part of the approval process included an easement that provided a access road that was designed for, essentially for the fire department to ultimately cross that path. They determined that the easement was not recorded. It is in the PUD and a condition of the PUD, so the city could record the easement. They were asking me if I would get the consensus from the commission as to whether or not it would be inclined to record that easement and move forward on that. If you're inclined, I can bring it back next meeting as an agenda item.
I recall I think that was like 2011. I recall
Okay.
that PUD, and I do recall having some sort of fire access in the back, and so, but I guess it's something we should be recording, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's in the PUD. If the reason it didn't get recorded is probably because nobody.
The church didn't build, I don't
Well,
think.
we didn't build, the church is built, but the city didn't build the road from Station 2 through the landfill and then into the back of Astor Lane and whatever those properties are to access Indian Street. If it sounds like it'd probably be better for me to bring it as an agenda item on August 6th to give the background.
Yeah.
And I'll do so. Or August 12th, not August 6th.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any public comment. Only two is with items 6 and 7. So we will move on.
Approval of the consent calendar?
Second.
We have approval for the consent calendar, a second. Any comments from the public? I see none. All in favor?
I have to do a
Oh,
roll
yes.
call. I'm sorry, Mayor. Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Collins?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rich?
Yes?
Mayor Brunner?
Yes. Okay, we're going to go to commission action. Lee, I'm going to read this and let you read the resolution. It's accepting state appropriation from the Florida Department of Commerce for Guy Davis Park improvements. Ben? Welcome. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Resolution number 62-2024, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, accepting a state appropriation of $500,000 from the Florida Department of Commerce for park improvements at Guy Davis Park, authorizing the city manager to execute a grant agreement with the Florida Department of Commerce as a condition of award, providing an effective date, and for other purposes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ben Hogarth, Community Services for the Public Record. So I was going to just briefly introduce the item. Pinal has a very brief timeline presentation for you all, just to go over where this project may have come from. For those of you who haven't been on commission for as long as this project has been kind of in conception. So the long story short for the last year is that about a year ago, you all adopted legislative priorities for the 2024 legislative session. We brought forward 3 different items for potential appropriation to the state. The state did end up appropriating money for one of them. It was $500,000 towards Guy Davis. So we were excited to get that money for this project. We can spend money on construction, on engineering design as well. Right now, staff is in communication with the Department of Commerce, which is now where it rests and reside kind of as a grant program. So the Department of Commerce is sort of acting as a grant administrator for the state for this program. They've requested permission from us to basically sign and execute a grant agreement, which will have a whole bunch of deliverables in order for us to receive that $500,000 in reimbursement for the project. So I'm going to leave it there tonight, not talk too much, and Pinal's just going to go through the quick timeline. If you have any questions about the legislative stuff, I'm here, and then Pinal's going to talk about where the CRA is right now with that project.
Well, Ben, thanks for explaining all that to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Pinal Gandhi Savda, CRA Director for the record. So we do have our consultant here, also Gianno Fioli from Calvin Giordano and Associates. I'll bring him up shortly to give a presentation and update on the project. But like Ben mentioned, we've had changed leadership and commission since we initiated the project, so I do want to walk you through the timeline of the project. So the idea of the community park improvements was developed through a charrette, the East Stewart charrette that was done back in 2002. That master plan was adopted in 2004, and we often use that as a guide to identify projects in the East Stewart neighborhood. In 2014, it was Community Services Department that initially initiated the project for the improvements and developed the master plan. The master plan was adopted contingent upon finding third-party funding. At that time, Community Services Department did apply for $4 million appropriation for the improvements from the state. But please note that even at that time, it did not include the recreation center. It was always the park itself.
Right.
We did not get funding at that time, so there were no action taken until actually 2019. When David Dias became the city manager, we revisited the master plan and amended the master plan based on the community needs and some of the changes that had occurred over the years. And then the project was divided into 4 phases. Phase 1 and 2 included new baseball fields, concession stand, restrooms, upgraded playground equipment with some water features, new stage pavilions, landscaping, and parking areas. And the phase 3 and 4 would come into play if funding becomes available. Phase 3 was recreation center improvements, and phase 4 was overflow grass parking area. And so we revised the master plan. We presented to the East Stewart community back in 2019, and we went out for RFP just for phase 1 and 2. And this is back in 2019. And then the master plan was further amended in 2020. We changed the design to include multi-purpose field and removed the baseball field since we already have the baseball fields at the Sailfish Park. So we rejected the proposal that came forward as part of the first RFP, and we went out for RFP again, second RFP in 2020, and with the proposed changes to the master plan. At that time, we received 10 proposals for the project. We contracted the design with Calvin Giordano and Associates in 2021. And then later that year, we also conducted a pre-design survey to get feedback from the East Stewart community and Stewart residents. At that time, we surveyed 327 participants. And then some of the top activities that came from that survey was they were looking for exercise and walking trails, picnic areas, event space, children's play equipment, lighting, site amenities and furnishings, bathroom facilities, and sports programming. So then we started working based on the feedback that we received and the master plan. We started working on the schematic plan, and that was presented to the board in January 2022. We had a lot of public that showed up at that meeting, and some of the comments we heard at that meeting was they wanted to see a skate park in the plan. The East Stewart community wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the culture and heritage of the community throughout the park. Additional restrooms on the south side of the park, improve the existing running track, improve lighting, ensure that the stage has, the proposed stage has the ADA compliance requirement, and provide activities for all age groups. And so based on the feedback that we received at that time, we further engaged with the community to gather history of East Stewart. We actually formed a subcommittee and developed some ideas and concepts that we could incorporate in a form of art into the park. And we learned a lot about the community and how we can celebrate their history, leaders, pioneers, and cultures of East Stewart, and incorporate those into as art elements throughout the park, not just the park, but the community itself. We met on Saturdays on quarterly basis from November through October 2022 to accomplish this task. And Giano is here. He is going to present the East Stewart Public Art Master Plan that was developed through those meetings.
Great, great.
We updated the master plan based on comments and feedback. And then that was brought back to the community and board meeting in 2023. So the original scope did not change. We kept the original scope, but we did incorporate an area for skate park, about 12,400 square feet area for skate park, pending that the private group provides funding for the project. We also are providing infrastructure for second bathroom on the south side of the park, community dog park, lawn area for activities on the north side of the park, with yard games and linear park that could be enjoyed by all ages, and additional art elements that would be throughout the park. So the additional scope would be completed as part of the second phase. So we're still keeping the original scope, and we're going to incorporate these additional elements, additional requests that came through meetings, but those would be incorporated as funding becomes available. At that meeting back in January 2023, the board did direct staff to move forward with engineering and construction plans for the project. So we did complete 30% design back in September 2023, and the other departments did review those plans and provided comments. Their work, the consultant is working on finalizing the 60% design, and I am budgeting $7 million in the fiscal year 2025 CRA budget that you'll see in September for your review and approval. So at this time, I'm going to ask Giano to come forward and give an update on the design and what the next steps are in the process.
Good evening, Giano Fioli with Calvin Giordano and Associates. It's a pleasure. And we do have a couple slides that we want to share with you. So as Pinal mentioned, we have worked very diligently to put together a master plan for this overall park. And we have really worked outside of the boundaries of our scope to make sure that we took all the extra work to ensure that the long-term additional phases that could come about as a result of the development of this park would all work very seamlessly with what the first phase would be. And, you know, much to commend to the city for, we actually took the time to pause to really build a relationship with the community, to let them know that the improvements of the park really are here for the betterment of the overall community as a whole.
I'm so excited over this.
Yeah, so a lot of those feedbacks that we got over the sort of prolonged participation of a lot of the community members, in fact, a lot of them opened up their private resources of data, photographs, as much information as they could to sort of give us towards that effort. So I'll say next a lot, Pinal. So we met in this room on several occasions with that subcommittee next. And out of that committee, we had a lot of discussions about how we wanted to celebrate the community and acknowledge the value that they brought to the overall neighborhood. Next. And the takeaway was that there were 6 main themes that we wanted to celebrate through that program. One was celebrating the women in leadership, particularly recognizing that women at the Spectrum School were really the sort of torchbearers of sort of teaching young children how to be active in the community. They wanted to celebrate the migration of the many different pioneer families that came here. Of course, some acknowledgement to Mr. Guy Davis and his contributions. They wanted to celebrate educators, celebrating the impact of sports, and celebrating the Black historic businesses, particularly with a focus on the entrepreneurship that some of these businesses have. Next. So we've compiled all of that together into an East Stewart Public Art Master Plan. That is, the way that we see it, is the first step to a living document that should be added to periodically so that this history never gets lost. We are limited to the amount of data that is accessible to us through the residents. Hopefully, additional residents will be able to provide some more data so that that master plan can be augmented. Next. So part of that master plan includes sort of an understanding of what the value of public art is, and you'll see a lot of the historical images that we were able to get from the East Stewart community. Next. So in there, we talk about sort of an educational component as to what the value of public art is. Next. In the plan itself, next, we provide a lot of guiding principles, particularly for the artists, so that they understand how they need to frame their work and how they need to approach their work so that it is sensitive to the feedback that we got. So those were expressing issues of diversity, and making sure that the art is unique, and making sure that it's appropriate. So towards those efforts, we provide a lot of guidelines for the artists. Next. And those are laid out in various different categories, such as how do you support the local culture and the local businesses? How do you provide an economic benefit? How do you provide some level of capacity building? And how are you true to the overall history that's there? Next. We also included criteria that the city should use in terms of evaluating what art should go in and how to determine if our art is better than another sort of candidate. Those includes the artistic merit of the overall piece, the sense of place, the suitability to an overall collection, and of course the material and durability to make sure that these art components, once they go in, that they're not fading in a 2 or 3 year time period, or they're not subject to decay or getting brittle with the sun. Next. We also created some curatorial themes to be able to guide how the artists will be providing the artwork. So there's 3 main themes that we wanted to derive from those bigger ideas that we got from the community. Those are really celebrating the heritage of the East Stewart neighborhood. Next. Celebrating the environment within which a lot of these individuals sort of live, and the character and look of the Stuart area. And then, of course, this idea of identity, celebrating the equity and the pioneer and diversity within the overall community. Then the major components of that were the major components that made up the sort of art pieces that would be part of that phase one. Next. So those first steps included 5 different art components that are laid into the park program. Part of the park program includes parking on the south with a sort of flexible event space that'll give us an opportunity to provide farmers markets, movies in the lawn, any kind of pickup sort of facility, as well as overflow parking in that pervious area. In the middle of the park, you have sort of a multi-use play field. And then on the north side, which will be the back of the community center, you've got stage, lawn, splash pad, restroom and concession, and a children's playground rehab. So within there, we wanted to sort of embed opportunities for art in public places. Of course, these were not built into the original scope of the work and into the original budget, but the idea is that as we get all the components parlayed from a pricing standpoint, we're able to roll out sort of prioritizations as to which art component gets to be incorporated into the overall park element. So I'll walk you through these really quickly. Next. The first one is the namesake of the park, which is Mr. Guy Davis. We want to have sort of an entry feature that celebrates him. And the one thing that we heard over and over and over again was that he was most recognizable by his hat, the fact that he wore a hat. So we have sort of a hat sculpture with a made up of a ribbon, and the idea is that the ribbon is sort of tying everything together. The outside of the ribbon is the royal blue, and the inside is a gold color. So those were the colors of the school of Spectrum.
Yes.
So we wanted to sort of bring that history into the overall component. Next. We also wanted to celebrate the pioneering quality of the community. So we're working with our architects so that part of the structural system are panels that are out that essentially becomes the facade of the restroom and concession building. Each one of those panels then becomes an opportunity for art display. So a myriad of different artists could be able to provide some art components there, and we're looking that potentially mosaics could go on that one. Next. We also wanted to create a sports walk of fame. These will be components that are embedded within the concrete with plaques, and they celebrate the different members of the community that have gone on and done great things in the world of sport. Next. Along the east side of the park, if you see the image on the top right where those overhead utilities are, right now we're in the process of working with the utility companies to try to get those things undergrounded. So we're working with FPL to service that, that building from the south. And the majority of the wires that are coming across are AT&T, or working with AT&T to get those things undergrounded so that then we can have clearance. What that'll do is that that'll give us an opportunity to start to look at that facade, that blank wall that currently is molded and mildew and kind of is an eyesore, working with that property owner so that that wall can become sort of a woman's mural wall, the place where we sort of celebrate the value and role that women played in the overall community. Next. We created a plaza on the south side of the park, which would be right next to the area that we've allocated for a potential skate park. And one of the things that we really took away from our conversations with the community was this notion that involvement in school and education was such a critical component to ensuring some level of advancement for the community. So the notion that whenever you want to participate, you raise your hand to be called in class, so we use that as a symbol. And the idea is that with these art sculptures, you have hands sort of being raised and come out of the sculpture garden, but then the wing of them, which we're taking from sort of an inspiration of the back fin of a fish, then becomes a place where we provide the history and the images of the people who we're trying to celebrate in the community. And the idea is that this then becomes sort of a plaza piece that becomes a destination for art. And I believe there's one more. And this one really isn't an incorporation in the park project as much as so much of the history of the community is lost when the buildings get lost. So what we wanted to do was to create these memorial markers that could be sort of parlayed throughout the East Stewart community that could identify critical components of that community that are no longer there. Sort of markers that mark what used to be there, if it was a corner store that was very important, or a member of the community, or something that merited some level of distinction, and then sort of a plaque with some images.
Is that copper?
That would be a material that we're recommending called folia. It's the material that Disney uses in all of their signage. You can take a sledgehammer to it and nothing happens to it. It doesn't fade. I installed a sign made out of it on a beachfront property in 2002 down in Marathon Key, and I went down there last year, and it was like it was installed yesterday.
Awesome.
So it's
Oh,
a
I
great
like that.
material.
I like that. I like that idea.
Yeah. Next. So through our research, we were able to identify a lot of different properties that were either of significant members of the community or of significant value to the community that we thought that would be sort of meritorious to be looked at as part of the overall master plan. Next. So as Panal mentioned, right now we're in the phase of finalizing the 60% plans. We have a little bit of a holdup with the utility companies. We're trying to get those negotiations done because of the pause that we did to sort of come up with the master plan components. There were personnel changes in the utility companies, and it's kind of like dealing with them all over again from scratch. So that has taken us a little bit more effort than we really wanted to. Our goal is to have those 60% plans done by late August, early September. We're then going to bring on our third-party cost estimator for them to give us a full evaluation of all the components of the park. And then at that point, we're going to determine within the budget that is allocated what can be part of the base bid. And then we're going to bid out all the other components of the park, even if they're over budget, as ad alternates, so that then you can get pricing directly from the contractors, so that you don't have us guessing what the market price is, but you have the contractors actually telling you what the cost to build these things are, so that then you can prorate and have real good numbers to plan for future phases in the future. At that time, in November, we want to come back to the community and have our last community engagement to let them know, out of all the components that we're putting in, what actually is going to make it through that threshold with the budget allocations, with the goal of finalizing the plans and getting ready for bid at the end of the year, so that by the middle of 2026, we'll be having a ribbon cutting for the park. So that's where we are in terms of that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very, very much. Kunal, do you have anything to add?
That wraps up our presentation. We're open to any
You need a
questions.
motion to accept the appropriation?
The appropriation, right.
Also move to accept appropriation.
Second.
Okay, we have a,
Your presentation was not in our packet, correct, Pinal?
No, that wasn't. This was just an update as part of the
Madam Mayor.
appropriation. We're going to come back again and give a full presentation. We just wanted to present something.
Please.
Yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
I'd like a copy of it as well. Madam Mayor, if you don't mind, I think we should, if it's okay with the rest of the commission, we send letters to Representative Snyder and Senator Harrell, thanking him for getting this appropriation completed and getting it to us. If that would be okay with the commission, we can do it by consensus? Sure, absolutely. Okay. So, and have the mayor sign a letter.
That's a great idea. Well, we have a motion and we have a second. Any comments from our commissioners? We do have,
One public comment.
yes, we do.
Mr. Cooper, I
Oh,
believe.
Yes. Joseph, is he here?
My man Joe.
Stevie.
Stevie. Is it Steve or is it Joe?
Good evening, Commissioners and
Almost
staff.
forgot. Thank you
Joseph
for
Cooper,
coming.
906 Southeast 9th Street. To come, I want to start off by thanking you for allowing me to speak. Thank Ms. Pennell and of course, Calvin and Giuliano for their great presentation. To speak on item 6, one of the things I want to start with is that I found this, is a public park considered to be public good? And so it's defined as a public good as a type of good that succeed in meeting the criteria for non-rivalry or non-exclusivity, like streetlights. No one can exclude anyone from using it, or someone's use of it will not reduce the availability. So it's a public park by definition, public good. Yes, it is, because a public park can be regarded as a public good because it's fulfilling the criteria of non-exclusivity and non-rivalry because anyone can use the public park. The Guy Davis Park in its concept when it was formed was located in East Stewart, but it's still a public park. The unique thing about this is that it will benefit the entire community because when we look at all our parks located throughout the city, this is centrally located. It's one of the largest by landmass parks in the city. It becomes a gathering not just for the residents in close proximity, but the way this plan, who I have also participated in this design and concept, speaking to the community, they want this. They want it moved forward. And I believe that this is an opportunity because when you create this, while we're celebrating the pioneers of East Stewart, as some of the things that we're incorporating, it's going to create, I call it a world-class park that will be utilized by all the city residents because of its location and proximity. So I implore the commission to kind of make it a part, as it's going to be a part of the budget coming up, but we want to also fund it because without funding it, it can't go forward. And I think it's the time we've been working on it for a long time and walking the streets, meeting everybody. And I grew up there. I ran to the parks and played. And so I think this is going to be a great thing for the city. And it's going to put because when we look at the county, they've done a lot of things to their parks. But we have Kiwanis Park, which is great, Memorial Park. But with the multi-use, the multi-facets of this park, it becomes, right now, we've got lacrosse being played, soccer being played, baseball being played. Now we bring it all together. We improve the facilities because it's a public good. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I believe that this is something that we should get behind as a city, and we should fund it post haste and get it done because the community wants it. Thank you.
I agree, Mr. Cooper. I agree.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Any other comments from the public? I see none. We'll take a roll.
Oh, can I just make a?
Yes.
So, the original conception for this, did you say 2004, Pennell?
2004, right?
So 20 years.
Yes.
The city has been, I appreciate the perseverance of, I think that precedes even you, Troy, doesn't it? 2004?
Oh, yeah, by many years.
So I don't know.
Mike is the one that, he's the one that did it back then.
I don't know what impediments, well, I can imagine them.
There's one
So,
impediment.
I think, Mr. Cooper, were you involved back then? 2000?
I wish. No, but I followed this process over the years. Just the whole, improving the city infrastructure.
Yeah.
So that's one thing,
In 2004, the CRA was generating about $100,000 a year.
Yeah, so I think it's taking some time. Now, we do have the money in the coffers. We kind of have to move that money to kind of get it started now. I think it's time. I think it's needed, and I think it's wanted, and I believe, once again, everybody in the city can benefit from it, not just the immediate residents, so I emphasize it.
We're fortunate to have such a big plot of land. I can't remember, 33 or 35 acres. What is it exactly?
That was 16.
Oh, well, I'm really exaggerating.
Yeah, that's it. And like I say, we have it. We can do it. I think when it's finished, I think everybody, we can applaud this because this is public good.
Yeah, and it's big. Thank you.
Oh, I just hope we can prioritize it to a greater degree and move it. I mean, that's a terrific looking plan. Thank you for that. I look forward to reviewing it in detail, and I look forward to our decisions with regard to the budget on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now we'll have a roll.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Collins?
Yes.
Mayor Brunner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rich?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move forward. This is release of unity of title for lots 1 and 2 of the Norton's Landing plat. Lee, could you read that, please?
Sure. Resolution number 69-2024, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, releasing a unity of title for lots 1 and 2 of the January 1988 Norton's Landing plat, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Okay, let me see what I've got here.
I think, go ahead, if you want to come up, but just see, as a brief background on this, this matter arose at the city in approximately 2015. I don't know if this is on, is it? Anyway, in 2015, when Mr. Stankovich came to the city's Board of Adjustment and sought a variance for some setbacks to build a home on what was amounted to essentially a legal lot in, I don't know which year it was, but I think it was about 2019. It was determined that, first of all, the Board of Adjustment granted the setbacks. That went forward, but in 2019, it was determined that there was 2 different unity of titles that had been recorded on the lot. One was recorded in favor of the city of Stuart, and technically it was 2 because one was recorded in 1989, and then it was recorded again in 1991, and the one in 1991 said that it replaced the 1989 one. But in doing this agenda item, I was concerned that if you just remove the 1991 one, would there be an interpretation that that meant the one from 1989 was now in place again? So 89 and 91 are considered one unity of title for the purposes of your conversation tonight. I had been speaking with Mr. Waters, and there was also a unity of title in 2003 that was given to the county commission, and I don't know why. I do not have any idea of what was related to that or what happened there, but because it existed, I had asked Mr. Waters to address that with the county before coming to the city commission, because I knew if it was outstanding, it wouldn't matter anyway. And it's my understanding that they went to the county back in October or November, and that the county commission withdrew or rescinded the 2003 unit of title. So now the property owner has a approximately 3,200 square foot house under construction on what amounts to be Lot 2, but it's restricted because there's a unity of title between Lot 2 and Lot 1, and Lot 1 has his primary residential home on it, and therefore he's before you tonight to request a waiver of the unity of title, and I'll let Tyson Waters take it from there.
Thanks for coming, Mr. Waters, and explaining this.
Thank you. Tyson Waters on behalf of the property owner and applicant here, and Mr. Mortel did a great job given the history, which is pretty confusing. But just to kind of backtrack even more, this whole section was originally part of the Indian Groves plat from 1920. In 1987, an individual owned a chunk of that land. She actually replatted it, so you ended up with a plat called Norton's Landing, which was lot 1, 2, and 3. Around the same time, as Mr. Mortel said, in 89 and 91, that individual got a unity of title that is with the city that's still outstanding today. And it actually includes not just lot 1 and lot 2, which are my client's property, but also lot 3, which is a neighbor closer to the main road. So this unity in title actually encompasses 3 lots, one of which is not ours. As Mr. Mortel said, the idea with that unity title, as you can read in the document, was presumably at some point a multifamily development was proposed for those 3 lots. Never transpired. In 2000, Lot 3 was sold off, and then shortly thereafter, in 1994, Lot 3 was sold off to a separate individual, and then in 2000, Lots 1 and Lots 2 started to be sold off. And then the owner of Lot 2, the owner of Lot 1 and 2, again, for whatever reason, back in 2003, went to Martin County and got a unity of title for just Lots 1 and 2 and developed a home. I first came in about a year or so ago to try and unravel this and realize the levels of complexity. So working with the city, we found these unity of titles. We first went to Martin County, who again had no understanding or knowledge or reason why their unity of title was in place, understanding that it was jurisdiction of the city. They had no point, so the end of last year, we had that one released by Martin County. So the only one left on this piece of property, and again, it's not just on this piece of property, but it's Lot 1, Lot 2, and Lot 3 are these 2 unity of titles. So what we're in front of you today is asking you to release the unity of title, which has no more purpose because, again, it was intended for a multifamily development. That's not happening. What this will allow us to do simply is to continue to work with the city to finish the development of the single-family home on Lot 2. That's it. And once this is released, we'll go back to the city, work with them to address any concerns or comments they have as it relates to the building permit so that we can complete the construction of that single-family home. And with that, happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hey, Tyson, thank you. I appreciate you coming and trying to unravel this mess. So just a couple things. I'm going to just focus on the last whereas clause of the resolution, if you want to take a chance to take a look at that. And really, I want to just kind of look at the last, I guess it's maybe a sentence or two.
Which page do you want it?
It's on page 2 of the resolution. And it is the last sentence, let's see. The owner of the partially built structure on Lot 2 completes the property to the extent that stormwater, because I know that he's he's modified the drainage easements, so that needs to be done. Outside landscaping and exterior of the shell are complete within a reasonable amount of time. So a couple things I want to do is I want to put a drop dead date of what I don't like reasonable amount of time because there is so much interpretation as to what that is, and I was talking with Mr. Mortel a little bit, and he said maybe March, April. I'd actually, because I want to put some other language in here as well, go up to 1 year to get that done. But because there's precedent from this, from a property over on St. Lucie Crescent, that if it's not completed, that the property would be demoed and that he would put up a bond to cover the cost of the demo. So what's your
So to address, it brings me to another point first that I can easily address. Another thing in this resolution is a requirement by the end of August to make sure by the property appraiser, they're identified as separate lots. Well, that's already happened.
Okay.
Yeah, it was September, but when Martin County released their unity of title, the property appraiser went ahead and assigned a new parcel identification. So now it is officially, according to the property appraiser, Lot 1 and Lot 2. So that's been done.
Okay.
As it relates to the timetable and the demolition, I don't think it's appropriate. One, in part because this unity of title, it encumbers Lot 3, which is unrelated, and as of right now, they're in violation of this unity of title. So this really just fixes a problem that affects more than just us. And I think part 2 is if this isn't released, and this is how I first came involved, was the idea was if in fact this is a unity of title and forced to be one, that the 2 structures would just simply be combined into a structure. So what we're trying to do is address ongoing situations so that if the unity of title isn't released, we don't want to demo the structure, we just want to combine it with the existing structure.
No, I know that.
And I think a lot of these things are more appropriately to be addressed as part of the building permit process. I mean, this has been affected by code enforcement complaints already, and I think that's the appropriate avenue, that in the event we don't comply with the building permit and the requirements of that building permit, whether it relates to landscaping, us demonstrating that we've met any stormwater issues and drainage issues, I think there's a code enforcement mechanism that's already in place for the city that's the appropriate means to do this, as opposed to condition a unity of title that says we'll grant this if you do this, because again, this unity of title affects another lot that's already in violation of the unity of title.
Well, the reason I'm going this route is, like I said, we actually have precedents from a property on St. Lucie Crescent that we forced the demolition on. Also, what I have heard from neighbors is about the lack of completion, and then as far as the code enforcement, the only avenue that we have is fines.
Right.
In code enforcement. And right now, the fines are reduced to judgment are approximately $130,000 and another $98,000 that has not been reduced to judgment. But as you know, because it's currently homestead, we can't really do anything about that. So that's why, as a condition of the release for unity title, I want to go that route. I want to give them plenty of time to get it done, and I want to because I don't want them to fail, but I also want to ensure that we are protected on our end if we grant this.
But I think you raise a good point. Right now, it is a single tract of land. It's under common ownership as a single tract of land, so it does have homestead protection. I think what you do by granting this release, you've now officially and formally created two separate tracts of land.
Right.
So there's homestead on one tract that's in compliance, it has a home on it. There's no homestead on the other tract of land, so I think now you do have more teeth to say, get it done or out. And so that's why, again, I think these conditions, while appropriate in some circumstances, given the history and the issues with this unity of title and the opportunities that it does present the city, I don't think those remedies are appropriate or warranted.
Yeah, and the reason, so I'm going to throw a hypothetical out there. Quit claims a portion of the property to a relative, moves them in there and puts homestead on it immediately. Then we lose our ability to do homestead.
Well, one, I mean, there is statutory protection because there has to be these disclosures of if I convey a piece of property to somebody and there's a code violation, there's disclosures. And I don't know if there's already a lien on the property, but there's a means that you can kind of protect yourself in other ways through filing.
And, okay, so let me think about, as we're deliberating, I'll think about these issues. I just want to make sure that, the owner acknowledges that we do have the judgments and understands we do have the judgments and the fines are currently running?
I think that's why I got hired. I was retained in the first place to try and address the situation at hand. And again, I was retained first to try and connect the units to make it a single home on a larger tract of land. I think through our research and investigations, I think this was the original intention, and this allows the original intention. Again, a building permit was issued, I think, again, as Mr. Mortel said, back in 2015, because there was an assumption that was incorrect that these were two separate legal lots. So again, we're just trying to correct something that has seemed to be an error on, again, not just this property, but Lot 3 since, the mid-90s.
And just make sure he acknowledges that he needs to fix the stormwater and that issue.
What I will acknowledge, again, there might be some disagreement about the condition of the property, drainage and stormwater, but I think what we all are committed to do is work with the building department so that we can address whatever situations need to be addressed out there and bring this property into compliance. That's why I'm here today.
And the landscaping and getting the exterior of the shell.
Whatever is required. And I know, I think that's the focus point too, of making sure the exterior is in a position that we can eliminate some of the
And I've heard
unsightly.
complaints from neighbors about not only about the condition of the structure, but the property around with construction debris and stuff like that. And has that been cleaned up?
That I don't know, but again, I think all of this, yes, so it has been cleaned up and it'll continue to be monitored as we're able to try and bring this property into compliance. But this, the release of the unity of title is the first step to allow us to bring it into compliance.
I'd like to say something about the property.
You got to introduce yourself.
Robert Stankovich, I'm the owner. The problem with the stormwater is the community next door, their property, their parking lot actually overflows into my driveway and goes across, actually Lot 3. And there's nothing we could do to stop that from overflowing. I mean,
Wasn't there a actual drainage easement, Mike?
Well, there was a swale that went between Lot 2 and Lot 3, and there's also a drainage or utility easement across Lot 1. But the name is called Village Oaks now, but before it was Village Oaks, in 1991, it was a different subdivision, and it was designed for the sheet flow of the stormwater to run down their parking lot and across lots 1, 2, and 3 that didn't have a driveway on them and that were just open space. So it happened in 1994 when whoever it was that built Lot 3 and Lot 1, they put the driveway in, and what would happen is the water would sheet flow over that driveway. And if you look at the Google Earth pictures, you can see a swale that directed the water kind of into the mangroves. And when they brought the fill in to put the house on Lot 2, the fill filled in that swale, and as a result, it now shifts the water to essentially the southeast, and it directs it not into Poppleton Creek, but into the backs of parcels that are 2 doors down the road. Our discussions in the past had been that Mr. Stankovich could put a grate in at the edge of his driveway that could capture that water and put a drainage pipe or stormwater pipe under his driveway right back to where the mangroves were originally, with a small baffle box of sorts to catch the water and go into the creek and accept that sheet flow. But there is no doubt that the sheet flow was designed for, I don't know how many units are in Village Oaks, but I think it's 14 or 16 units. If in fact Mr. Stankovich were to put a stem wall up on the edge of his driveway there to prevent the sheet flow from coming onto his property, he would essentially flood Village Oaks. So
and my own property.
Right.
Lot 1. And I just want to mention something, that I never altered the Lot 3 swale. That's same elevation that's always been, so I didn't touch that. I mean, that's not even my property, Lot 3. And let me just also mention something else too, that, I worked with Lot 3 owner and Robert Long, because Robert Long is the one that was affected, and actually the previous homeowners from that house for years and years and years. Since I lived there since 16, there might have been 3 owners, and I saw the basement, all the contents of the basement out on the street like 3 or 4 times because the whole bottom just floods. So when Robert Long moved in, he redid the whole bottom end, and just immediately it got flooded. So I worked with him, and what I did was I increased my retention area behind, on Lot 2, and that actually cured the problem, and it doesn't go into Robert Long's property anymore. The only thing that he'd like to address is Lot 3's gutters. She just installed gutters, and I know that there was something there, but I don't know what it was. But that's the only thing that Robert Long's concerned with, because, even with the flooding, I don't know what I only can control so much, so.
Right. Well, we want to solve this, sir.
Right.
We want to get this solved tonight. And let me see if there's any of the other commissioners that want.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Martell's statement was made that the swale was not filled in. Do we agree with that?
No.
Okay. Was a permit obtained to fill that swale in?
So a building permit was obtained to build the house that he's building, but
9 years ago.
I'm going to show you a Google map right here that I just pulled up on the internet, and you can see the swale. You can see the curvature of the fill. And if you go to that property,
I was there today, and
yeah,
it does
this
not
is your
look like
driveway,
that.
and that's the dip. That dip is gone.
Gone.
So, I mean, there's no doubt that that was there.
See right here, right at that area, the that's all.
So
That's original elevation.
right, that original elevation goes to those palm trees right there. And then when I leave the elevation and go to where the current construction is of the house, those palm trees are right here behind the corner of the new home. And as a result, that swale can no longer go here, and instead it flows down this way to these other homes, and that's where that flooding goes. But if you looked at that street view, you could see it was there. Again, I wasn't planning on getting into this debate.
No, we don't want to do that. We don't, go ahead, Mr.
No, I have a few more questions. Okay. Has Mr. Stankovich called for all the required inspections during this 9-year construction process?
Yeah, I've actually had an
I'm
active.
sorry, I'm
oh,
speaking
sorry.
to the city manager, Mr. Stankovich.
I don't know that he called for all of the inspections. I know that Steve Nicolosi, the prior building inspector, revoked the permit back in roughly 19 or 20. I don't actually remember the specific date. I do have
I think it's
some-
21.
Or
I think.
21. There was a code enforcement proceeding that started as it related to it. I had a history of it. A hearing took place, a code enforcement hearing took place, and roughly, let me see what the dates were. I got involved in it in 22. In February 21, he entered a code enforcement stipulation regarding multiple code matters. The stipulated order agreed that the windows would be complete, the roof would be complete and inspected, and the entire house, outside of the house, would be complete prior to July of 21. In February 22, the property was violated for failure to comply with the stipulated order. In March of 22 hearing, the city learned that Mr. Stankovich had never subdivided the parcels to create the legal parcel for the second home to be constructed. Pursuant to the city comprehensive plan, a permit cannot be issued for 2 houses on 1 lot unless the second house meets the criteria of an accessory dwelling unit. The permit issued to Mr. Stankovich expired, and the second house remains in disrepair and unfinished after being under construction for 7 years.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
Can I say
May I
something?
finish?
Well, let him finish, sir.
Okay.
You know, the purpose of regulation is to ensure the safety of our community and those of us who live here. And it's not just for your safety that we have building requirements and your family who you choose, but in an area that is so prone to hurricanes, your inadequate roof flying off poses a danger to the entire community. Your indifference to the necessary presence of that swale to drain that community is very disturbing to me. I've been told by the people that live there that you put your trusses up, and they were up there for up to 6 months uncovered. I called a truss company today, and I said, does that threaten the integrity of those trusses? And they sent me to this. It cannot be assumed that a structure is okay after being left to weather for a very long time. A ballpark number is about a month. That they may be left out for a week max and then should be covered. You probably voided the warranty on your trusses. Let me finish, sir. I think the city has a problem here in that we have to ensure that this structure and all the elements in the structure are safe.
Absolutely.
And I don't know to what degree we have inspected, but if your roof trusses, were up and exposed for that length of time, and the warranty is voided, this is a mess. This is a mess. I also hear that, and I tried to walk there today, but I had my dog and the thunder started, and he was not going to let that happen. But that along the shoreline, it's very deteriorated because of inadequate measures to protect the shoreline.
You mean-
And that, you degrading the shoreline in Poppleton Creek there, it
But that's
threatens all
not
the homes.
that's not mine. That's the state. I didn't touch that.
I just think, I appreciate Commissioner McDonald's concern for some very strict requirements and deadlines here in light of prior behavior. And I do not know the best way to handle it at this point.
Can I just say one last thing? That's not true, that the trusses were up for 6 months. I put those trusses up, before that, previous to that, they were on the side of the building, and they were covered the whole entire time. When I put those trusses up, the paneling went up right up immediately. And I probably have pictures from that, dated pictures from
Let's
that.
let Mr. Waters be your representative and let him do the talking. We're trying to work out a deal here for you.
Thank you. So I've got and I don't know about the swale or the drainage. All I know are the documents, the legal documents that I've had a chance to review. And the 1995 plat of this subdivision does not have a drainage easement from our neighboring property through our property. There are drainage easements that go that split Lot 1 and Lot 2 down Lot 3, but that's what we have to rely on. Whether there was a swale and they were permitted to drain over these lots, I think that's a separate issue, that all of that can be reviewed and analyzed as part of the building permit application, because right now we're stuck. Because we've realized that we've got this unity of title, we're not able to pull a new building permit, update the existing permit, and move forward. We're just in this kind of hiatus. Either we get this unity of title released and we pull a building permit and proceed with construction, which is going to allow your inspectors to go out there, a whole cooperation of a holistic approach of how this was constructed, where we're at in construction, and do all those reviews. The alternative is this unity of title is not released, and we're still in that same position, and the two units have to be combined in some fashion. So this simply addresses a problem of what's now been 30 years of a unity of title that combines 3 parcels that should not be combined anymore. It does not address the integrity of the building. It does not address the structures on the property. All that's going to come through a separate means of the property owner applying for a new building permit, having all those inspections to make sure that he complies with every single rule of this city, and if not, you've got consequences in code. But for step 1 for us is to have this unity of title released so that we can start that next process.
I would like to see us leave here with this solved. Commissioner McDonald?
So, and I understand, by the way, I very much understand your position on that, Mr. Waters, but here's the thing, is we released the unity of title without addressing these other issues. We really don't get another bite at the apple other than just fines. And I'm looking here at the timeline memo, and when, of course, one of the things was not disclosed to the city when about the unity of title when the lot split was requested back in, I think, 2015. Is that when it was?
There was never a lot split requested. There was a Board of Adjustment for a waiver of setbacks, and the property owner said that he was doing a lot split.
Okay. And so there was things that were done improperly there, and but what I'm more concerned about is the timeline. So we have a stipulated order, don't get it completed, another stipulated order, or that's why so as we're not completing these timelines, unless we put some strict timelines in, I mean, with consequences, I don't think he'll get it done.
I agree.
And his
I
history,
agree.
his history has been to not get it done. I've heard from the neighbors, and I want to have some teeth into the agreement, into the resolution that says if he doesn't get it done, then there's a consequences. And like I said, we do have precedent for this. We did that with this on a property where we required the property owner to do a stipulated order to get a property completed and up to code by a certain point of time, and it involved a lot. There was a lot split involved with that as well, and that house ended up coming down because they didn't get it done. And so my experience tells me is if we don't put the teeth into it, then it doesn't happen. I have people come back, the neighbors, and come back and let me know about it in no uncertain terms. And I'm not gonna go this route again.
Couldn't I just suggest something? I actually suggested a timeline, and that was 1 year from the issue of the permit, the new permit that I applied for. So once the new permit is approved, then I have 1 year to finish the outside, is what we talked about. That's what, I mean, because even, when it was.
How long will it take you to get the permit if we approve this tonight?
Well, I'd like to put in for a permit like right away. Like I have everything.
I could go 1 year. I would consider 1 year from the permit, but I want to have to see the permit applied for within a certain amount of time and issued within a certain amount of time. Because one of the things that I see over and over again is that people apply for permits, don't provide all the necessary information, and then they complain that they didn't get their permit. And so I don't
Let's
want
make it a year from tonight. Just
and I think I agree with that.
keep it simple.
You still have a stormwater.
And the stormwater.
Does he have to
Yeah, we
address
have
the
the
remedies?
And what's that?
Doesn't
And
he
we
have
have
to
to- he has to address
remedy
the
some of the
stormwater as
problems
well.
he's created?
And he has to address the stormwater as well
Yes.
within that 1 year.
How so?
I would say more quickly than that.
But I mean,
I'm fine with that. Whatever needs to be done. I mean, I had all the engineering and that whole site plan was the correct elevation, even with the whole entire thing.
because we have a stormwater ordinance for single-family homes now.
The distinction is that our stormwater for single-family homes requires you to retain your stormwater on site.
Right.
I am 100% sure the stormwater from Village Oaks is going to sheet flow across that driveway and through that front, where the swale used to be, it's going to shift back to Mr. Long's property and flood the closed-in portions of his property unless there's a stormwater pipe put in that can capture that sheet-flowing water and have
It's
it
already
go
in.
to the creek.
It's already in there. Already had it.
You got a permit and build a stormwater?
I didn't put it, it's on Robert Long's property. But
Because you're going to have to do something with that stormwater, so.
What do we want him to do?
Yeah, having just gone through this myself for a little ADU on my property, yeah, I mean, that retention of stormwater was a complicated calculation, and
This particular matter could be easily resolved by just agreeing to put some kind of grate at the edge of his property line between his property and Village Oaks that captures that water and runs it through a stormwater right across that grass area I showed in the picture and let it bubble up right at the edge of the mangroves, right there at the edge of Poppleton Creek. The stormwater would end up in the same place that it's been directed to go the whole time.
It's
and
already-
it wouldn't be significantly expensive.
it's already there. It's not on my property, but it's on lot 3.
No, we're talking about one on your
An
property.
additional, yeah.
You need to put one in.
So that would be one of the conditions as well.
Well, and I don't know, so when we talk about Lot 3, I don't know if it's there or not. I don't know if somebody went in and put it in, but it's just to capture the water coming off of Village Oaks and directing it somewhere.
Right.
I think that's what I would ask if there is a stormwater control issue, as opposed to forcing it to be placed on Lot 2 if it's already on Lot 3, and maybe that's sufficient with some other cleanup to address the
Well,
problem.
just something to satisfy
Right.
that issue.
Right.
Right.
I'll be satisfied that as long as that it's resolved to the satisfaction of our engineer and building official. And I do want to put in a 1 year from today and then a bond for demo.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think I'd ask for a little bit more time, because the idea with the 1 year from construction is that there's going to have to be some cleanup and some,
Okay,
it's going
how
to take a
much-
year
how
with
much
the
time?
construction. I think we'd like to, I think you can apply with 30 days, right?
Yeah, I could
I
apply
mean,
for the permit within 30 days.
And then
So
So for what
13
it's
months?
worth, and for what it's worth, I don't think the building official or anybody in the city was ever looking for a completed CO. We're just talking
External.
about closing in the house, like if none of the bedrooms inside are finished.
Yeah, I want the
I'm
exterior
okay with
there,
it, just so
yeah.
that the neighbors have a perception that it's finished, not the
Right.
actual finished out inside.
because it's been a tar paper roof for months.
Yeah, so we need to have the exterior of the structure completed.
Stormwater.
Stormwater done. We need to have so I'll tell you what, I'll give you 30 days to get your permit and 12 months to complete that work, and a bond for, say, what,
Demolition.
$25,000 bond for demo.
As part of our inspection and within this process, also look at the trusses and the roof.
Is that something?
I think the building department will do that
anyway.
regardless.
Yeah.
The only thing I would have a concern with is the 30 days to get the permit, because if there's a stormwater design, we're going to get outside of that.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be 30 days to apply. And then I think that's the hiccup too, is because once we get into it, because we don't know about the stormwater issue and how to retrofit it to address whatever needs they have. But that's my only concern of
If you're making real and substantial progress on the stormwater and you come back to us, I will be open to listen to that problem if there's a, but I want to see real and substantial progress. And if there's if you get into and there's some engineering issue, then you need to come back to us. And I think that would be fair.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I hated that it was without shingles. When there's a stop order, I can't put shingles on. That's the problem.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Thank you, yeah.
So I'm going to make a motion that we approve this conditionalized, and the condition is you have 30 days to apply for a permit, 12 months from the 12, and then an additional 12 months to complete the exterior of the property, landscaping, and stormwater, and that if it is not complete, then at the city commission's discretion, we can demo the property, and you'll provide a $25,000 bond for demo.
What happens on day 31 if he hasn't got his permit in?
And he's out of compliance.
Well,
he has to apply. He has to apply for it.
Well, and
If he hasn't applied on day 31?
the unity of title is conditioned upon him applying for the the permit. So in the event that it didn't, if a condition precedent didn't occur, it wouldn't perfect the rescission of the unity of title.
And what are we doing about the substantial fines that he's currently facing?
That's not for tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, well, there'll be another avenue for that. But again, I think we have to come into compliance before we can address those violations.
Okay,
Is
Mr.
there a
Waters, I
time?
have,
I'm sorry, is there a time frame from if I submit the permit, say, I'm going to do it right away, but from the time, the permit is issued, like from the time I put it in, and then the town has to go.
I think he has to successfully apply, because there's a lot of work involved in it.
Right.
So he has to successfully apply. You just can't submit an inadequate permit application and go, oh, it's not my fault.
If you're working and making substantial progress and there's a delay for something that is reasonable, you can come back to us. But it needs to be legit and not, when I look at this timeline memo over and over again. So that's what I want to avoid.
Flouting. This
Mayor,
was
you have this
flouting.
motion, and we do have a second. Mr. Waters, I'm going to ask the lady to come
I'm
up.
sorry.
You all can sit down.
Madam Mayor, I have that Troy McDonald made the motion. Who made who
Second.
seconded?
Chris.
Thank you.
Commissioner Coleman.
Yeah. Ms. Taylor?
Barbara Taylor, I live at 320 Southwest Indian Grove Drive, just behind Mr. Stankovich's property. And we've been looking at this for many years now. It's been 10 years in the making, and it lays a lot of it on me, Barbara Taylor. It's written on here. I've only lived there for 3 years, so we have 8 magistrate meetings that we've been to, 8 minutes that we've been to, all on Mr. Stankovich's promises that he's going to do this. So now you're going to give him another year, which each time he gets to a certain point, he has something to blame it on, whether it's COVID, whether it's me, whether it's his dad passing away. For whatever reason, he comes up with something that he can't complete this job. So now all of us that have been looking at this home, and those trusses were uncovered up there. I did live there, and they were not covered with anything. And now that the black stuff that is on top of it, the tar paper, is also all peeling off. The grounds around the house are all caving in, supposedly from the drain water that's not supposedly. This is where he lives, in a flood zone, a FEMA major flood zone. This is where the gentleman whose home's flooded a number of times, he lives in a major flood zone, major flood zone. His house has been going underwater for long before Mr. Stankovich ever put his house on that. So it's nobody's fault, it's just Mother Nature. That's what she did. She put a major FEMA flood zone there, or maybe when the city of Stuart made that roundabout themselves of that water, because they did add that so that we'd have a flow of Poppleton Creek. Those trusses are on there with no hurricane ties for all of us. The windows are wide open, there's trash bags on, and we've been looking at this for years and years. And I've purchased a home with my hard-earned money and have lived there, and this is what I've had to look at. And it's just not fair to the rest of the community. It's not fair to any of us around there. Now he's gonna get another year, and now we keep giving him more, now another month, and then after that, another year. And how long does it go on? What's gonna be the next excuse that we can't get it finished? And so then we're gonna come back here. I see excuse after excuse. And part of it's the city's problem. You all have passed so many things along that somebody didn't get the approval for this, or somebody didn't get the approval for that, or Mr. Meyer gave them all of this stuff without asking anybody. Mr. Meyer also,
Ms. Taylor, we do want to get this solved, and I agree with you. I don't want it to go on any longer, and you shouldn't have to suffer anymore. So hopefully, this man gets one more chance, or that's it. Thank you.
thank you.
I have nothing further except it's our intention to come into compliance, and with this direction, it allows us to take that first step to pull a building permit, and there's consequences. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Okay. Oh, yes,
Always for Helen.
Up here, stop.
There's a permanent green
Here,
card.
thank you. Now let me try and go Avenue. Sitting here listening now, you know, Bob and I, we built the house 51 years ago. I just had a lot of construction work. Our building inspectors come right away. They're great, and I can't understand, like as that woman said, I wouldn't want to live in that neighborhood. Remember, there was one over by the river that was a shack and that. No, a year is too long. I mean, I had to live in my house and look across the street and see it. You're being way too generous. If she hadn't stood here and told all of them, you keep giving them breaks and giving them breaks, and he's not doing it. We built the house on Flamingo Avenue in August, and we moved in that February. So it doesn't take that long. And right now with the construction that we just had done, a roof, an air conditioning, impact windows, it was only 3 months. And a lot of the material had was on, you know, you order it and it doesn't come in right away. No, you're being way too lenient. Think of not just this woman, of all of us in the city of Stuart. Do we want this in our neighborhood? And our inspectors in the city are great. I mean, when construction did something, it got denied. And the gentleman that came from the inspection office, and he said, I'm sorry. I said, no, you're doing your job. And that's what our inspectors do. They're doing their job. But you five have got to have better backbones and say, no, we the people can't. He's had all these breaks. I mean, next thing you're going to be giving them the money to fix it. Let's think of every one of us.
He's in the CRA.
Thank you.
Is there any conversation around tightening up the time frame or any amending to that motion,
we did. It was now.
or we feel good about a year?
It's a year.
There was already a motion on it.
I think,
I was asking if we wanted to amend that and tighten that up, or if we feel
no,
good.
I think that, you know, we have to be, if we're gonna put in the condition of tearing the house down, we have to make it reasonable. And I would like to make it 3 months, but I don't think that would be reasonable from a perspective of withstanding a court challenge, so.
Got it.
So the permit is the only intermediate timeline. So after that, until
That was a
So
little
later,
bit
there's-
confusing for
well,
clarity. Is it
There
either
is
from tonight
currently
or the
a
permit?
code enforcement magistrate order with a fine running at $250 a day. So every day that he doesn't have it finished, a $250 fine runs, that I'm sure when it's complied, he's going to come back before this board and ask you guys for some forgiveness on that fine. If he is lackadaisical about it and ignores your comments tonight, I doubt you're going to be very sympathetic to the reduction of that fine when it comes time to hear that issue. So there is a sword hidden in there because he's gonna, I mean, $250 a day, it's already well over $100,000. It's close to 200.
It's actually at just shy of it's like 228 right now.
And it's currently on homesteaded property, but after the split,
It won't be homesteaded.
on homesteaded property.
Yes, but I
you-
believe
the city
Mr.
would-
McDonald suggested a strategy that could circumvent that, unfortunately. Is that correct?
Well, possible, but I think that, we're going to just have to,
It would be difficult
it'd be difficult.
to record the homestead because you'd have to live in the house to homestead it. And if the house never got a certificate of occupancy, I doubt that the property appraiser and tax collector would recognize that as where you lived.
So I think Mr. Mortel is
Okay, we're going to have,
provides a solution in that there's going to be very little leniency regarding that ongoing fine.
okay, we're going to have a roll call.
Okay. Vice Mayor Rich,
Yes.
Commissioner Collins,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Mayor Brunner.
Yes. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.